Welcome to another Learning Live. Today, I'm going to help you fall in love with KPIs. Now, you might be thinking, KPIs, why would I want to know more about KPIs? Well, in the recruiting world, KPIs is sort of equivalent to a swear word for many people. And what that means is that it's a technique, a tool, a tactic that has been used in a way that makes people so fear the word that businesses run away from being connected in any way, shape or form with a KPI. But the reality is KPIs are a fantastically useful tool for recruiters to be successful. But the problem is the tool has been used so poorly for so many years. Managers and businesses are falling out of love with something that could help turn them and their consultants' performance around. And the way I'm going to help you to fall in love with KPIs is to see it less as a manager's tool to beat you with, and more of a tool that you can use to help your own performance and help you be successful. And so, firstly, we've got to think, is there such thing as a good KPI? Well, absolutely. When Chris Froome or Geraint Thomas wins the Tour de France, you don't see them going, I'm tremendously happy to have won the yellow jersey, but my manager micromanages me. Dave Brailsford gives me all these metrics and he makes me do the hours and he targets me on watts and it's just such a hard life. You don't see football players talking about being micromanaged. And the reason being is that even though professional athletes have KPIs coming out of their ears, the difference between you and them is that they are intimately connected with the numbers that they're given to work on and the results that it should yield. And it's less about them being given a standard set of metrics and more about what are the individual riders' metrics or the individual athletes' metrics, and what do they need to do in order to become successful. And so that's how I'm going to help you love KPIs, or at least fall in love with KPIs, is by helping you see KPIs as something that should help you manage your own performance and your own business in a way that helps you be more successful. So let's start thinking about the types of things we need to consider. Well, the first thing is that KPIs should be connected to your sales pipeline. You're familiar with a pipeline image like this, where at the top you've got your social media and you've got your market intelligence and your client networks, your candidate networks, and they all distill into leads, and we get some jobs and then we work the jobs. If you haven't seen something like this before, well, it might explain why you don't love KPIs, because you don't necessarily understand the components of a sales pipeline and what you need in the go and on the go in order to be successful. And so what we want to do as a starting point is, if you want to do your KPIs and you want to fall in love with KPIs, you need to understand what you need to do and how it connects with your success. So let's start with this for a moment. So let's say, for example, we want to bill 120k in the year and your average fee equals 5k. So that equals 24 placements per year or 2 placements per month. Oh, that looks like an A there. Anyway, making sense so far? So sometimes people have got metrics. You've got to make 2 placements a month. Well, they don't even understand what that actually means. So now we work through 2 things that we need. We work through volume metrics. This is the number of things that you need to do. And we work through effectiveness metrics. And effectiveness metrics are how inputs convert into outputs and how the outputs then convert into the next stage of the sales pipeline. So let me give you an example. So if I need 2 placements per month and my fill ratio is 25%, I'm going to need 8 jobs a month that I can work in order to give myself the best chance of being successful. Now, depending on the market you're in, is that the next stage up in the pipeline, as you'll see here, is leads. So how many leads do you need in your business in order to convert 8 job orders a month? Now, if I'm an established consultant and I've got an existing client base that I keep in touch with and I nurture on an ongoing basis, I may only need 8 or 10 leads in a month in order to get 10 jobs. But if I'm a new consultant, I've got no relationships, I've got no map of the market, I've got no existing client base, my conversion rate from lead to vacancy could be as low as 10%. So let's take the worst case scenario. Let's say, for example, sales qualified lead is 10%. That means I need 80 leads a month, which is 20 per week, 4 per day. Now you might be thinking, I have a lead generation target. I had no idea how that correlated with me getting jobs. But you need to. How many leads do you need to be nurturing on a day-to-day basis in order for you to get the correct number of opportunities in a month? The biggest challenge that most recruiters have is they just don't have enough in the pipeline to afford for the ratios to twist and turn and play against them. And so if we've got 80 leads, we've then got to think about, well, how many of our business development contacts will yield a lead every month? Well, let's say, for example, it's 20%. Let's say it's 25%. I'll give you a benefit of a doubt. So 25% means we need 320 people in an active contact cycle. Now that could be candidates, it could be clients, in order to generate 80 leads, which in turn will generate 80 jobs. So if we've got to keep 320 people in a contact cycle over, say, 30 days, then our weekly activity target would be 320 divided by 4. So that's 160. That would be 80 business development connections a week. But if we set ourselves a 60-day conversation cycle, that could go down to 40. But the point I'm trying to make is the fact that if you don't like the fact that you've got to make 80 calls a week in order to get your 80 leads, in order to get your fill ratio of your jobs of 8, in order to get your 2 placements, you've got to think, how can I make that better? So let's say, for example, if I could get my lead conversion ratio to 20%, I'd only need 40 leads, which would then mean I only need to keep in touch with 40 people. At the heart of what we've really got to be thinking about is, do you know the activity metrics that you're being set, or you set yourself on a day-to-day basis, and how those transition from volume metrics through to output metrics that lead to a sales pipeline and sales performance? One of the biggest challenges for recruiters is that they just don't speak to enough people. They just don't know enough people. They don't have enough people in a contact cycle to allow 20% of them to give them leads, to allow those leads to convert into jobs, and those jobs to convert into placements. When I sit down with consultants, a lot of time, I'll sit there and I go, how many people do you speak to regularly? And they'll go, 30. And I'm like, well, what percentage of them are going to give you a lead every month? Well, probably 20%. Great. Well, 20%, that's 6 leads a month. How many of those leads are you going to turn into real jobs? Well, probably 3. Well, 3 is only going to equal a placement. And so it's really important that you think about, how are you going to build metrics that work for you? Because when you've got metrics that work for you, you can be really excited about hitting those and then managing the output in order to help you be successful. So let's take a quick look at some of the metrics that you might have. So look, first and foremost, we might start with some of the delivery metrics that we use on a day-to-day basis. We could look at work in progress, which is one of my favorite metrics, which is the value of jobs that you're working that are at interview stage and beyond. Typically 3 to 4 to 1 for every pound that you want to bill. So if you want to bill 15 grand in a month, you probably need somewhere between 45 and 60,000 pounds at work in progress stage. So when we look at CV sent ratio, what we've got to think is that that's often a vanity metric for many recruiters. Hey, I've sent loads of CVs. Really, the measure that means something is around first and second interviews. How did I convert my CV send in there? And that's where these effectiveness metrics are so important for the delivery functions and organizations. What is my fill ratio? How many jobs do I need to be working in order to hit my target? If I need to work, so if I need to make 2 placements a month, do I need to work 10? Do I need to work 5? You'd be amazed at the number of recruiters that just have no idea. But you need to know. Because if you don't know how many jobs you need to get, it doesn't tell you how much business development you need to do in order to make your placement. The world is littered full of recruiters that are working 1 or 2 jobs and hanging on desperately for dear life in order to hit their target, where their stats would tell them if they've got 2 jobs, they're probably going to make 1 or no placements in a month. And that's what KPIs are all about. It's not about driving 50 calls or 100 calls meaninglessly. It's about picking numbers that help drive your business. How many interviews do you need in order to make a placement? How many CVs do you need to send to get an interview? How many interviews do you get to placements? All these are numbers that are really important for you to hit your goal and hit your target. When we get to lead conversion, we're into business development. We've got 2 types of leads. We've got marketing qualified leads, which are things that you pick up off the open market. A candidate says, I'm interviewing at company ABC. Or you look on XYZ's company's website and they say, we're recruiting for a full stack Python developer. That's a marketing qualified lead. A sales qualified lead is a lead that's been qualified by the sales team. That's you, the recruiter. How many sales qualified leads do you have in active nurture cycle? And what I mean by that is that it's not about calling and saying, give us the job, and them saying yes or no. It's about how do you track that client and track that relationship to the point where they've actually had someone start. Most people, if they've got a plan, aren't going to abandon that plan. They're not going to abandon that plan if they think it's working. But if you stay close, at the moment that that process breaks and they need to go externally, who do they call? Do they call you? How many meetings are you booking with leads? That's a fantastic output from the lead generation and lead conversion activity that you're doing. Because a face-to-face meeting significantly increases the likelihood of you converting a lead into a placement. So how many leads do you have to meetings? How many contacts do you have with a lead, a sales qualified lead, before you convert it? I was listening to a talk by Johnny Campbell, and they said they were talking about social talent, and they need 6 contacts with someone over different channels before they can typically get them on the phone. But they need another 4 or 5 contacts before they can get that face-to-face meeting. They know these numbers because it's then not about hothousing people to do mindless activity. It's about how do we get more from what we do, or do we just need to do more because we've got as good as we can get? And what I mean by that is once you get above maybe a 60% fill ratio on perm, it's quite difficult to get more than that. Now, it may be you're retained, which is a different kettle of fish, in which case your fill rate might be 95%. But do you know what you need on the go in order to be successful? Let's go to our client nurturing activities. Remember, these activities are a mix of these activities are face-to-face activities, phone activities, email, social media activities. They're targeted towards new client in order to generate sales qualified leads, but it's also about nurturing existing clients. So how many new qualified managers have I generated in a day? Now, if I'm an old Sea Dog recruiter and I'm hitting my target, giving me a new contact target is irrelevant. I've probably got 80% of the relationships I'm going to need this year already. But if I'm a rookie recruiter, targeting me on client meetings is a bit of a dud metric, really, because I'm probably not going to book any meetings regularly for probably a couple of months. But the number one metric is probably going to be how many new people did you contact that you've qualified as someone you want to keep in touch with. And when I say qualified, they buy what I'm selling. They're able to use me. They're able to use me. I thought I heard a noise in the background there. They're able to use me and they're likely to buy in the next sort of 4 or 5 months. So how do you measure that? How many new sales qualified leads do you generate on a day-to-day basis? How many new client meetings do you book? How many existing client meetings? What's the number of people you've got in a contact cycle? How many meetings do you need in order to generate a sales qualified lead? How many business development conversations do you need in order to get a meeting? I gave you an example there of Johnny Campbell. But you need to know, because what you're then able to do is know what metrics that you need to hit. Again, candidate metrics are just as important. For me, because I'm a business development geek and I love business development, how many candidates are you keeping in touch with on a day-to-day basis? How many business development conversations do you have with candidates? If you've got a resourcing team, the number of new qualified candidates is a really important metric, but not as important as the effectiveness ratio of the relationship between the number of people you bring in and the number of those candidates that are sent towards jobs and those people that are sent that actually get interviews. You'll be amazed at the number of resources that are targeted on placements but don't have any meaningful metrics behind that can lead them to the output. Remember, number of placements is an output metric. They're lag metrics. They're the result of something that's already happened. Lead metrics are things like the number of candidates that you've got. That lags into the number of CVs that are sent, which then lags into or leads into the number of interviews that you get, which ultimately turns into the placements that you've got. The key is that every metric in your organization needs to be attached to their sales target and to be clearly attached to the sales pipeline that individual needs. So what we've got to think about in our lives day to day when we're thinking about business development is how do we manage our sales pipeline? Do we just go with this company standard metrics? Or after a while, and just so you know, company standard metrics probably aren't a bad place to start, as long as you can get your manager to explain to you how those metrics lead into 2 placements a month. But I challenge you to think about what should your metrics be. When before I entered recruitment, I used to sell educational books door to door, commission only. And I had metrics. And I reviewed my metrics and my ratios every single week. Because when I first started, I was told my sales target was $500 a day. And the average sales size was $100, which meant that I needed 5 customers a day. And my manager went, do you think you're going to be a pushy salesperson or you're going to be a pushover salesperson? Because if you're a pushover, you'll need to sit down with 4 families for every one that you sell. Or are you a pushy salesperson, in which case you'll close 1 in 2? And I said, well, I'm sort of in the middle. So he says, well, let's assume 33%. So if I wanted to close 5 customers a day, he said I needed to sit down with 15 families a day in order to get my 5 customers. That's not bad. But not everyone I showed my books to for like a mini demo on the door would sit down with me. So I probably need to show my books to 30 people to get 15 to sit down with me. He said that, well, out of, if you want to show your books to 30 people, 50% of them will probably allow you to show them the books, which means if you want to show 30, you need to knock on 60 doors a day. What I didn't realise was that I was rubbish at knocking on doors. Absolutely horrific. So my conversion rate from knocking on a door and introducing what I'm doing to actually showing someone the books was 3 to 1. So I needed to knock on 90 doors a day to speak to 90 people a day in order to show my books to 30, to sit down with 15 to get 5 customers. I sold books for 3 summers. I didn't get any better at my approach. I always had to knock on 90 doors a day. But over time, my package size improved from 100 to 150. I moved from closing 1/3 of deals to 60 to about half of deals, which meant that I would sell 100. I would sit down with 15 people in a day. I would get 7 customers, and I'd sell them 150 each. So I'd sell $900 worth of books, but I still had to show my books to 30 people, and I still had to knock on 90 doors. But every week I used to sit with my manager and we used to look at my ratios from the week, and we used to look at my ratios for the summer and think, right, what do we need to do more of? How are we going to do better? If I needed to increase my close ratio, we would look at how I'm building need. We'd look at my close process. If I wasn't getting many sit downs, we'd look at how I convert showing someone books on the door. And then how do I convert that into sitting down with someone in their house? The same goes with recruitment. I've had periods where I'm picking up loads of jobs and I'm not making any placements, so I focus on my fill ratio. I've had time when I've got enough, I'm not getting enough jobs, so we focus on the effectiveness of my business development. How good are my client meetings? How effective is my lead chasing? The key is, if you want your conversations with your manager to be meaningful and to give your manager the opportunity to coach you, you need to be focusing on metrics that are relevant to you at the point in time that you are in your sales pipeline. And so I've got a challenge for you. Well, it's sort of a challenge for your manager. I want you to think about all the different activity metrics that your organization collects. And I want you to build your own sales funnel. How many jobs do you need to fill a month? How many jobs do you need to work, or vacancies do you need to work? And that would be your fill ratio. How many sales qualified leads do I need to generate in any given month in order to get the jobs that I want? And then from the number of leads that I want, how many conversations do I need to have to generate that many leads? Because all of a sudden, having a call target in a week won't be meaningless, because there'll be meaning for the fact that if you speak to 20 people, you're probably going to generate 4 leads. Those 4 leads may generate 1 job. And that 1 job probably won't equal a placement. So I'm going to need to go back and make some more calls or more emails or build more relationships to generate more leads to get another job. And all of a sudden, you look at your desk every day and you're pulling a lever that you hope and wish and feel will convert your activity into money. And that's how you fall in love with KPIs, is every single one of them being meaningful to the point for every call, email that you do, you know that it's delivering on a part of your sales pipeline and helping you be better today than you were yesterday. That's the end of this week's Learning Life. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.